Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Next matter is change of zone number 1993. Mr. Whitehouse.
Thank you. This is a ordinance to amend the comprehensive zoning map of Sussex County from an AR1 agricultural residential district to a C3 heavy commercial district for a portion of a certain parcel of land lying and being in Broadkill 100, Sussex County, containing 64.85 acres more or less. The property is lying on the west side of Coastal Highway, which is Route 1, and the southeast side of Broadkill Road, which is Route 16, at the intersection of Coastal Highway and Broadkill Road. The 911 address is not available, and the tax parcel ID is District 235, Map 8, Parcel 39.00, and I know it's a portion of. Submitted into the record, Mr. President, we have a copy of the applicant's exhibit booklet, a copy of the DELDOT service level evaluation response, a copy of the applicant's traffic impact study, a copy of the DELDOT response to the traffic impact study, a copy of the staff analysis, and I would note that we have received 24 comments which are submitted into your paperless packet, although one or two of them appear to be potential duplicates. The application was subject to a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission and its meeting of January 3rd of this year, and at the meeting of January 24th of this year, the Commission recommended approval of the application for the 10 reasons as outlined within the motion. And Mr. President, a copy of that motion, along with the draft minutes of both of those meetings, is included in your paperless packet. Thank you.
Questions of council? Questions of council? Mr. Moore?
Not Mr. Hutt, you're back up.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Members of council, for the record, for this application, my name is David Hutt, a local attorney here in Georgetown with the law firm of Morris James. For change of zone application 1993, as it was just introduced by Mr. Whitehouse, I'm representing the applicant and owner of the property, Ocean One Holdings. Sitting about 2/3 of the way back are two of the principals of Ocean One Holdings, LLC, Joel Sens and Chris Khalil. And the gentleman sitting to my left, your right, when I was sitting down, is probably someone who does not need an introduction to you, but that is DJ Hughes, a professional engineer and the senior traffic engineer with Davis, Bowen, and Friedel. We will hear from him later in the presentation regarding traffic, as of course is indicated by him being the senior traffic engineer. As just indicated when Mr. Whitehouse introduced the application, there was a project book that was filed as part of this application, and we asked that it be made part of the record. When Mr. Whitehouse referenced the application, and certainly if you looked at the short title of the ordinance, you would see that this application this afternoon is not for the entirety of this parcel. The entire parcel is presently 115.6 acres, and this afternoon's application relates to what I'll call the front half, although it's 64.8 acres, which I recognize is more than half, but in general terms, we'll call it the front half of the parcel, which amounts to the frontage along Route 16, which is where the cursor is located, and then, of course, the frontage of the property down along Route 1. The line that goes across the screen right here is the proposed zoning line, with the areas above that line being the request is to rezone those to C3, or the county's heavy commercial district. The reason for this proposed zoning line will be shown on a future slide and make more sense, I think, when you see that future slide. The last application, change of zone 1992, of course, dealt with a property on Route 16 just to the west of Milton, and this application is similar in that it deals with a property located on Route 16, but of course this is on the opposite side, on the eastern side of Milton. I am again certain that all council members are familiar with the intersection of Route 1 and Route 16 in Sussex County. Certainly there are some landmarks there to help orient everyone, but the most common or frequent landmark that would orient you is the Rookery Golf Course, which lies directly across the street, or where the cursor is located presently on the screens around the room. Of course, right now, this site is also unmistakable because it is the site of a significant DELDOT construction project, as DELDOT is busily installing a grade-separated interchange at this location where Route 16 will go under Route 1 at that location. On the screens around the room right now is a Google Earth image showing the property and some of the surrounding area. The previously mentioned Rookery Golf Course is highlighted on the screen are identified by name on the screen. And that, of course, is directly across from this property. And just to the south of this property, and you can see right at the top of the cursor, a little bit of the building, but that is the Milton Napa Auto Parts store on the western side of Route 1. Immediately to the west of the property, where the cursor is located, is Smith Landing, which is located here where I'm circling it on the screen, which includes, of course, an RV park or campground. The lands that surround that RV park or campground are in an agricultural preservation district. As you travel west on Route 16 towards the town of Milton, as you get to the Reynolds Road intersection where the cursor is located, there are, of course, other uses, commercial uses, including the Lockwood Design and construction offices. There's also a self-storage facility associated with those offices. Next to that is Frantic Frets Music and Antiques. And then on the other side, the far western side of that commercial area, is Fuel Automotive. Returning to Route 16 and this site, to the immediately north of this site are the Eagle Nest facilities. As I'm sure you are all familiar, there's a number of uses that go on at the Eagle's Nest campus. There's, of course, the church itself. That is also the location of the preschool, elementary, and middle school campuses for Delmarva Christian Schools. It is also here in this wooded area is the Deep Branch Family Campground, and adjacent to the location of that campground is a planned assisted living facility, which has preliminary approval from the Planning Commission and is seeking final site plan approval soon. To the northeast of this property, of course, if you go across Route 1, there is a GR, General Residential Subdivision, that has been there for some time, known as Grants Way, which is directly across from the Rookery. And if you were to travel on 16 east, of course, and would go past the Rookery, you would come to a newer residential subdivision known as Woodfield Preserve. There are no improvements on the property that we're here to talk about for the change of zone this morning. As you can see, looking at this aerial imagery, its most recent use and its current use is for agricultural purposes. As I just described, this area does include a diverse amount of uses, ranging from a few businesses to a church to a school. There's several campgrounds in the area. You can see there's a number of agricultural uses and fewer residential uses in areas than many of the applications that Council considers. Even the one earlier today, of course, was surrounded by residential uses. And this application, as you can see, has significantly less residential use in the area. There are individual residential uses and home sites along the roadways that are adjacent to it. But the nearest communities, residential communities, are the two I mentioned a moment ago on the east side of Route 1, being Grants Way and Woodfield Preserve. In looking at the zoning map that's on the screen, of course, this property is highlighted in the middle of the screen and outlined in yellow. And the zoning map for this area tracks what everyone sees, of course, as they drive up and down Route 1. What you wouldn't see on this, because it's a zoning map, are the conditional uses. As Council is familiar, campgrounds are an example of conditional use. And so there are actually 3 campgrounds. I didn't mention Steamboat Landing, but Steamboat Landing is off to the east as well. And so those would not show up on this slide. But as you can see, there are a number of locations along Route 1 that include commercial zoning designations. And when you look at this zoning map, you can see that it matches what most people would consider to be sound land use planning, which is that where you have intersections along a primary roadway like Route 1, you're also going to have commercial uses. If you start at the very northern end of Route 1, as it's shown on this map, that's the intersection just south of Waples Pond. Where that red is located is the intersection of Route 1 with Route 5. And of course, there is commercial uses and activity at that location. As you travel south, the next intersection would be Deep Branch Roads intersection with Route 1. And at that intersection, there's a Valero gas station, there's Snookies, and there's several other commercial uses, and you can again see the red area that's indicated there. There was commercial zoning on the eastern side of Route 1, which of course with the grade separator interchange will not be used in a commercial manner other than of course conveying cars up and down the roadways. As you travel further south, you come to where Hudson Road intersects Route 1, and on both sides of Hudson Road and on both sides of Route 1, there are commercially designated properties at those intersections which are used in a commercial manner. As you travel south, there's, of course, Eagle Crest Road, and you can see there is, again, at this intersection, commercial uses, as indicated by the red that's on the screen. And just off screen, the image couldn't quite capture all of it, but if you were to travel just off screen, of course, is the intersection of Cave Neck Road and Route 1. And there is certainly commercial zoning, commercial uses at that intersection with Route 1. And in fact, County Council during the past 3 years has approved 2 change of zone applications at that intersection on the western side of Route 1. One of those being change of zone 1982, which was the Chapel Farm application, which changed the designation of that property to C3, the same designation as is being sought this afternoon. And the other being a change of zone 1916, which was filed on behalf of Alice Robinson, and that zoning classification went to C2, medium commercial, again, right at the intersection with Route 1 and Cave Neck Road. Another one of the planning tools that the county uses when looking at land use applications is, of course, its 2045 future land use map. Again, what's on the screens right now is an excerpt from that map. And significantly, and I know that Council has spent a long time on the comprehensive plan as well as the future land use map. And section 4.4 of the comprehensive plan states, the future land use plan is the most influential part of this comprehensive plan. That same introductory paragraph in section 4 goes on to describe the 7 bases of how the future land use plan and the corresponding future land use map that you see on the screens around the room was developed. This afternoon, I want to look at the 4th bullet point, or the 4th basis for how that plan was developed, because it states that Sussex County's future land use plan is to encourage tourism and other responsible commercial and industrial job providers to locate and invest in the county. As the future land use plan states in section 4, that it's trying to encourage commercial and industrial job providers to invest in Sussex County. Of course, Council and the Planning Commission and residents and property owners look to the future land use map to see where the county has indicated those growth areas and those jobs and commercial areas should be located. So the comprehensive plan tells us how, the map tells us where, and as set forth in the materials for this project, as well as on the maps that we've looked at today for this, you can see that it made sense for the county to designate this area as one of the county's growth areas. You can see in looking at the screen, this tannish color is the developing area in Sussex County. And if we looked up and down Route 1, many of those areas that were shown as C1 commercial areas are designated as commercial areas. The lighter tan or yellow color is, of course, existing development areas. And then as you travel west on the future land use map, you come to the town of Milton, and you can recognize the municipal limits and boundary there. The reason that this area is likely a developing area as designated on the future land use map is because of its location at one of the major intersections in Sussex County. DelDOT classifies Route 1 as an other principal arterial in its road classification system, and Sussex County Zoning Code classifies Route 1 as a major arterial roadway. Regardless of this road's technical designation by DelDOT or by the county in its code, I think everyone recognizes and agrees that Route 1 is one of the three major north-south corridors in Sussex County and for the whole state of Delaware. Similarly, as was just mentioned in the last application, Route 16 is one of the primary east-west corridors for Sussex County. And as I mentioned during that application, it has been designated and classified by DelDOT as a major collector. As mentioned at the outset, and why we would recognize this intersection, DelDOT is currently spending more than $30 million to install a grade separated interchange at this intersection. In addition, of course, when you look at how the county classifies areas as growth areas, one of the things that the county looks at is whether or not there are central utilities available. And central water is available through Artesian wastewater management, through Artesian Water Company, and central sewer is available through Artesian wastewater management. On the screens around the room right now is the county's CPCN map, indicating when you look at the checkerboard crosshatching that you can see on this property that CPCNs exist for this property for both water and wastewater. As I indicated, they are both CPCNs that Artesian holds for this area. The growth area, as is indicated on the map, that this area lies within is within the developing area, and the comprehensive plan describes the growth area by stating that it's an area where, in selected areas and at appropriate intersections, commercial uses should be allowed. Portions of the developing areas with good road access and few nearby homes should allow for business and industrial parks. If you move further down in the description in the comprehensive plan, it talks about that availability of central water and sewer facilities for the site, and that they are strongly encouraged for this particular growth area, the developing area. Of course, that description that I just read that's found in the comprehensive plan is an apt description of this property. It is certainly at an appropriate intersection, and as was indicated in that definition, areas where there are few nearby homes are places where it's appropriate to have some sort of a business, commercial, park, or use. And as was indicated when we looked at the existing communities in this area, they exist on the other side of Route 1, the two residential communities, and there are certainly other lots that exist that front on the roadways, but this is not a densely residential area within the county. When you look at Table 4.5-2 within Chapter 4 of the Comprehensive Plan, it describes zoning districts that are applicable within future land use categories, and the C3 heavy commercial district is an applicable zoning district within the developing area pursuant to the 2045 future land use map. As C3 is an applicable zoning district, it is important to look at the purpose of that district as it's defined and described in the zoning code. The code states that this C3 district is generally intended for larger scale, auto-oriented retail and service businesses along major arterial roads that serve local and regional residents as well as the traveling public. In addition to most commercial uses found in this zone, automobile, truck, recreational vehicle, and boat sales, rental, and major repair facilities may also be located in this district. Like this application's consistency with the comprehensive plan, this application is also consistent with the purpose of the C3 zoning district, as was just read to you from the zoning code. This property is certainly located along a major arterial road, as it's located along two major arterial roads. And it is the goal of this application it's intended to serve both local and regional residents as well as the traveling public, which of course fits well with it being situated along the Route 1 corridor. Thus, all the county's land use tools support this application. Those include, we looked at the comprehensive plan, we looked at the future land use map within the comprehensive plan, we looked at the purpose of the C3 zoning district as it's set forth in the zoning code, and all of those things point to this being an appropriate designation, this C3 zoning classification being an appropriate designation for this property. Of course, as council knows, every 5 years, Delaware's Office of State Planning Coordination publishes the state's strategies for state policies and spending regarding how the state views land use, and ultimately that translates into where the state is going to spend dollars on infrastructure. On the state strategies map, this property is designated as being within a level 3 area. When you look at the state strategy policies, level 3 is described as being favorable for longer-term planning in anticipation of future development, which makes it a good area for master planning activities. In addition, when you look at the state strategies and how they're described by the Office of State Planning Coordination, there are different sections, just like in the county's comprehensive plan, that talk about housing, that talk about utilities, that talk about transportation. Within the level 3 area, in talking about the transportation element, level 3 state strategy states that the priorities in the level 3 areas are for DelDOT to focus on regional movements between towns and other population centers. Of course, we know that DelDOT's already investing more than $30 million at this intersection to help with those regional movements, again, all being consistent with the state strategies for this area. With that background on the comprehensive plan, the future land use map, zoning, as well as the state strategies, I did want to talk a little bit about some of the characteristics of the property. The property certainly meets all the bulk area and height requirements that would apply to this property, which in the code requires a minimum of 1 acre, a minimum width of 75 feet, and a minimum depth of 100 feet. And certainly that's encompassed within the nearly 65-acre application that is in front of council this afternoon. Of course, similarly, the property will be able to meet all necessary setback and other bulk area requirements that are found in the code. There are no wetlands located on the property. As has been delineated or determined, it is thought that there is, when you look at the mapping that you can get online from DENREC, there may be a portion of wetlands that comes into the property in the southwest corner of the property, but that area, of course, it would be formally delineated as part of a site plan review process and would be well out of any type of development area. And as indicated a moment ago with respect to the bulk area requirements, there would be no difficulty in meeting the county's resource buffer requirements that are found in order to buffer any wetlands that may be located on the property. The same holds true for the property's floodplain designation by FEMA on the flood maps. The overwhelming majority of the property is shown as Zone X, which are areas determined to be outside the 500-year floodplain. However, that same area of the property I mentioned that may include some wetlands may also be within a floodplain, but as I indicated, that would not be detrimental or in any way detract from the use or development of the property, as it would just simply be part of the open space or otherwise buffered as part of the use of the property. There are no Chapter 89 source water protection area concerns for this property. There are no wellhead protection areas located within its boundaries, and similarly, the properties are not located in an excellent groundwater recharge area. Rather, the areas are designated as being within fair and good with respect to their potential for groundwater recharge. As I indicated a moment ago, and we saw the slide, this property is has central sewer and water available to it through the artesian resources companies. The other item that we always talk about, and we just did with the last application, is that a service level evaluation request precedes the filing of any zoning application in Sussex County. DelDOT's response to the service level evaluation request was that it considered this to have a major impact on traffic, as that term is described and defined within the memorandum of understanding that the county has with DelDOT for traffic in Sussex County. Oftentimes, and this was the exact case with the prior application, when there's a change of zone application, DelDOT advises council that in its opinion, there's not a traffic impact study that is necessary at that time, because until the specific use is known and a site plan is submitted, it would be difficult to determine that. Because of the nature and scale of this, and because of how long, as you'll hear in a moment, the owner of the property had been working with DelDOT, DelDOT advised that a traffic impact study should be completed prior to council's consideration of this change of zone application. Because of that, within the project book materials that were referenced by Mr. Whitehouse, there is a traffic impact study review letter that was the original version was dated September 27th of last year, and then it was updated by DelDOT the day after Christmas on December 26th of last year. The updated TIS review letter simply clarified the maintenance of the proposed service road and off-ramps and said that they would be dedicated to DelDOT and ultimately become a state responsibility. Both versions of the TIS review letter are part of the materials and the record for this matter for council's consideration. But I wanted to go back to 2019, which is when Ocean One Holdings acquired the property. When they initially acquired it, it was approximately 120 acres. And since that time, DelDOT has acquired approximately 4.5 acres, what I'll call the northeast corner, as was necessary for DelDOT's work on the grade separated intersection project. From the outset of Ocean One's acquisition of this property, there have been ongoing discussions with DelDOT regarding potential uses of the property and how those uses would access Route 1 and Route 16 so that the ultimate use and the ultimate plans for this property would not be a surprise to DelDOT, so that it would not disrupt the construction of the grade separated interchange, and ultimately, of course, so that it would be included in DelDOT's planning at this intersection, as it was going to be spending tens of millions of dollars, that these would all be integrated improvements. In fact, while the TIS review letter and then the supplementary letter that I just referenced were issued by DelDOT this past fall and then right after Christmas, there was a memorandum of understanding that DelDOT entered into with the property owner in March of 2021. That, among other things, within that memorandum of understanding, laid out the process of how this project could apply for and work through the land use entitlement process. Significantly, within that memorandum of understanding with DelDOT from 2021, the property owner and DelDOT agreed to a maximum number of average daily trips that will be generated by this property. And that average daily weekday trips number is 17,699. I point this out because at the public hearing before the Planning Commission, there was concern expressed about this project exceeding the Route 1, Route 16 grade separated interchange plan capacity that DelDOT envisioned when it designed and is now constructing this grade separated interchange. And I would tell you that that is why there is a memorandum of understanding. One of the reasons there's a memorandum of understanding between the property owner and DelDOT is to fix the maximum number of average daily trips for that, so that it was accommodated within DelDOT's project, subject, of course, to the applicant completing the off-site requirements that are set forth in the TIS review letter. I'm explaining this because it shows how much time, thought, and planning has gone into this property since it was acquired in 2019. Over the past 4 years, there have been a number of discussions. We're going to hear about some of those in a moment from Mr. Hughes regarding traffic, conversations with DelDOT, and what that process looked like. This zoning application that we're here on this afternoon is simply the next step in that long-range planning for this property. I'm sure that everyone is familiar with the project, but if you were to go to DelDOT's site on projects, this image that's on the screen around the rooms exists on their website describing this project. And DelDOT describes the project as its HEPSC SR1 and Route 16 Grade Separated Intersection Project. Of course, the property we're here on this afternoon is located right where the cursor is located. And you can see the Rookery Golf Course immediately across the street. This is a 2D version of the grade separated interchange. If it's easier to envision it as a 3D version, DelDOT has that available on its website. And you can, of course, see Route 1 passing over Route 16 on these images. On this image, the property we're here on today would be where the cursor is located on the left-hand side of the screen. There's two important things to bear in mind when Council looks at and considers the TIS review letters that are in the file. The first thing is that what is described in that TIS review letter as the potential uses for the site are essentially placeholders. There are no contracts, there are no LOIs, there's not a site plan. We're not here to look at a site plan today of uses. Those are uses that if you total them all up, would reach that maximum number of trips. And so there's not one use that's being proposed here this afternoon. So the TIS review letter and the image I'm about to show you is not a proposed concept, and it was done for DelDOT to be able to issue the traffic impact study review letter that Council has available to it as it makes this decision. The second item I wanted to note is that the traffic impact study review letter relates to the entirety of the property, not just the 115 or it relates to all 115 acres, not just the 64.5 acres that we're here on this afternoon. And that means, of course, that it includes all of the frontage areas that are located along Route 16 and Route 1, but it also includes the balance of the property that is being excluded from this application. To help aid in the discussion of the TIS review letters, the process that the applicant has gone through since it acquired the property in 2019. And I'll also ask Mr. Hughes if he would describe the off-site improvements that are described within the traffic impact study review letter. I've asked Mr. Hughes if he would come and describe that, briefly describe that history to the Council, as well as those improvements. I will say that what's being shown on the screen right now is, again, it is a concept that shows some potential pad sites. It shows the location of a potential service road. This is a change of zone application and not a site plan. And so this is for discussion purposes, but it's helpful to see some of these improvements pictorially as Mr. Hughes will be describing them. With that, I'll ask Mr. Hughes if he will describe those things in more detail for you.
Hi, my name is DJ Hughes. I'm a professional engineer with Davis, Bowen, and Friedel in Milford. As Mr. Hutt said, he went over some of the history, so I'll try not to double up too much, but we've been working several years with DelDOT on this, and culminated in a TIS scope of work in December 2020. As we continued to work with them, it led to a memorandum of understanding in March of 2021 that was accompanied with Exhibit A, which depicts potential site layout and land uses, and basically assuming the highest and best potential uses per the comp plan. And the MOU was signed by the developer and DelDOT, and it allowed the development to move forward with, as Mr. Hutt said, up to 17,699 trips per day. Now, some of those trips are internal to the site, and some of them are pass-by trips that are already on the roadway. So not all of those trips impact the grade-separated interchange or off-site intersections. The TIS evaluated the land use that was assumed that led up to the 17,699 trips, and it evaluated the DelDOT proposed grade-separated intersection, which basically, if you take Route 1 and you been through the Little Heaven interchange, it takes Route 1 over top of I think that was Bowers Beach Road there, and there's signals on each side that are at grade level. That's basically what we're looking at here. The only thing is DelDOT initially did not plan signals. As a result of the TIS, signals are now recommended for where the ramps coming from Route 1 intersect Route 16 at grade. So that was one change that was recommended as a result of the TIS to the DelDOT project. And another change is that there's going to be an additional lane under the bridge, which DelDOT has confirmed there is room to do that. Basically, instead of having left turn lanes that joined each other with a taper, where it's basically one shared lane with left turn lane in each direction, you'll have a left turn lane the full length under the bridge for each direction on 16. And that will lead to a service road, which will be signalized at 16, which will then come down to a roundabout. That roundabout will serve the on-ramp to Route 1 southbound. So if you're coming eastbound on 16, you'll turn right onto the service road, hit the roundabout, and then hit the free flow ramp on the southbound Route 1. So the TIS basically not only dealt with the grade separated intersection, but also your site entrances and other off-site intersections as typical. The entrance and frontage improvements are actually more than would typically see, considering there's a roundabout, a service road, and then the on and off ramps, or the off and on ramps on southbound Route 1 that we're building that intersect the service road are going to be built to freeway standards. So they'll be the same standards as a DelDOT GSI intersection, which is not normal for frontage improvements. And the service road and the ramps are required because Route 1's part of the corridor capacity preservation program, so you couldn't have direct access to it. So that's why we had to build these level of improvements for the site. And the service road will run from 16 all the way down to the southerly property limits, which is just north of the Broadkill River. And the service road will be built to state standards and maintained by the state and dedicated for public use. It'll be designed and constructed by the developer. They'll also be required to design and construct a dual lane roundabout that'll serve the ramp that goes to southbound Route 1, and it'll be two-way serving the site and all the pad sites or whatever else may end up on the site. The off and on ramps will connect to that we're building will connect to the service road south where the DelDOT ramp connects to Route 1. I don't know how well you can see that up there. But they will have very large radiuses, and they'll be designed to get people off of Route 1 and onto Route 1 without negatively impacting the flow there. There's also traffic signal agreements that are going to have to be signed at the Route 16 and Route 1 ramp intersections. There's a potential signal at Route 16 and Zion Church Road, which the developer is required to contribute $104,000, about $105,000 to. There's an existing median. It's the third median south of 16 on Route 1 that'll be required to be closed by the developer. I think they were concerned about people trying to sneak in and out of the median to get to and from the site. So that'll be required to be closed. And then you'll have your typical bicycle, pedestrian, and transit improvements that we'll be coordinating with DelDOT on as we develop a site plan for this project. I think I covered everything. So with that, I'll turn it back over to David.
As I indicated right before Mr. Hughes started speaking, this is showing just an image that shows the potential layout that would include the required service road that you just heard about from Mr. Hughes, as well as some pad sites, some potential areas for there to be stormwater management, as well as open space areas. And Mr. Whitehouse, I'm looking for the arrows that allow that image to be increased. Thank you. Where is that? Thank you. Oh, perfect. So as was just indicated by Mr. Hughes, and I know there was people trying to see it, that's why I asked that it be increased in size. The service road would come from that dual-lane roundabout and extend essentially to the southern boundary of the property. Again, this is not a precise configuration. It's a concept. Of course, off of the dual-lane roundabout, you could access Route 1 off of the ramp, essentially. And, of course, down at this southern end is the other entrance location and on-off location, as you can see, onto Route 1 in that area. The service road and the ramps that I just described for you would be, as Mr. Hughes indicated, constructed to state standards and ultimately dedicated to the state of Delaware. These areas total approximately 8 acres. And I mean, if you just added up exactly what's on the screen there, it's a little more than 7.8 acres. So in round numbers, we're talking about 8 acres of the site that ultimately gets dedicated to the state as part of that service road corridor paralleling Route 1. As I bring the presentation to a conclusion, I, of course, wanted to reiterate that what you see is certainly not a site plan review for people's consideration. That future site plan review is certainly a significant part of the process. Of course, that helps to determine what the uses are going to be, and the county would see those during the site plan review process. It would, of course, be significant to make sure that all those bulk area requirements that we talked about a moment ago could be met. But it also means that any future applications will be subject to review by not only the county's planning commission to ensure compliance with the zoning code, but also by all the various agencies that review site plans and comment on those things. Certainly stormwater management gets reviewed by the Sussex Conservation District as part of its work as it assists DENREC. There are other details of the site, whether it's the state fire marshal who weighs in on whether or not things are being conveyed safely in a manner that fires could be fought effectively. But all the various agency approvals would be required as part of that site plan review process as uses are determined for the site and an actual site plan is developed rather than the conceptual plan that you see on the screens around the room. Circling back to where I started when I began my presentation, I described, of course, that this change of zone application deals with part of the property, not the entirety of the property. And as you can see on the screens around the room, hopefully that helps to describe some of the logic behind where that line was drawn. It started at the corner of the northwest corner of the property so that we could make sure that all of the frontage that's along Route 16 was captured and simply extended to the corner that you can see here in the southeast of the property. And one of the main thought processes behind that, striking that line where it was struck, was, of course, that service road. One configuration is what you see on the screens around the room, but there's a lot of variables on that, and allowing for enough room for that service road to be included in any ultimate design was one of the primary reasons that the line was struck where it is and why you have an application for a portion of the property to be rezoned. Of course, the question that Council has in front of it this afternoon is whether or not it is appropriate for this property at the location of Route 1 and Route 16 to have a designation of C3 on the county zoning map. Earlier, when we were talking about some of the planning tools that exist, we reviewed the state strategies for this property and talked about the level 3 areas, and that the state indicates that these are areas that should involve long-range master planning and looking at items for various years, and also talked about conveying traffic and areas between regions. That's exactly what this application envisions and has been envisioning since 2019 when the property was acquired. For the past several years since it was acquired, the developer has been involved through the services of Mr. Hughes with that long-range planning with DelDOT including the Memorandum of Understanding from March of 2021, which ultimately resulted in the Traffic Impact Study review letters that are part of the project book material. One of the most common criticisms, and it might be the most common criticism, that Council hears every Tuesday when it conducts public hearings on land use applications is that development occurs and then DelDOT tries to catch up with whatever the traffic impact of that development is. This afternoon's application is the opposite of that criticism and that concern. As you've heard, since 2019, the property owner and DelDOT have been working together through a Memorandum of Understanding and Traffic Impact Study review so that this project would have a maximum amount of traffic that it could contribute to that grade separated intersection and ways to integrate it into that grade separated intersection. Of course, that project is underway right now, the grade separated intersection, and it will be constructed before any site plan could go vertical on this site. And so this is a situation where you're going to have the traffic improvement be constructed prior to any other improvement or any other development on this property. And in fact, of course, the developer, pursuant to the revised Traffic Impact Study review letter, ultimately would be dedicating its traffic improvements, the service road and on and off ramps to the state of Delaware, and they would become part of the state's network of roads. This is smart, responsible growth, something that the County Council hears very often in comments from those in opposition to applications. In addition to looking at the long-range master planning that Level 3 areas talk about, we talked about the comprehensive plan's description of developing areas within Chapter 4. And as was indicated then, it talks about, the exact words are appropriate intersections for applications. Route 16 and Route 1 is certainly an appropriate intersection, particularly when the state is presently spending tens of millions of dollars to enhance that intersection for the traveling public. In addition, of course, the comprehensive plan's description of developing areas talks about portions of the developing areas with good road access and few nearby homes should allow for business and industrial parks. And again, that's an apt description of this area of Sussex County. As you saw, there is not a number of residential communities on all sides of this property. The nearest communities are on the other side of Route 1, adjacent to the Rookery Golf Course. What is adjacent to this property is, of course, residential homeowners, and I think some of those individuals are here today. But again, there are few nearby homes, and the comprehensive plan indicates that these are appropriate locations, appropriate intersections, few nearby homes that allow for business and industrial parks. And the intended use, which I'm sure everyone has seen and heard in all the various publications that are out there, is in the nature of a business park. It's a retail and family entertainment center for this area as you travel along the Route 1 corridor. But setting aside the intended use, because as council is aware, this is a change of zone application, so any permitted use that's shown within the C3 zoning district would be available to the applicant should council rezone this application. This application is a match to the county's comprehensive plan regarding developing areas in Sussex County. This is a busy, appropriate, as the term is used in the comprehensive plan, intersection in Sussex County with excellent road access that's being improved as we speak, or as I speak here this afternoon. And it has the few nearby homes, and not to, of course, diminish the impact of a home being right across the street, but they are not large subdivisions that are located nearby. When Mr. Whitehouse introduced the application, he referenced the letters that are within the file. There are letters in opposition, but there's also a number of letters of support in that file. And I point this out for two reasons in particular. First, I don't believe council very often sees that kind of support for a change of zone application when there's a public hearing. And second, because it shows that this is an appropriate location along arterial roads to serve local and regional traffic as well as the traveling public. The Planning Commission noted this support in Reason 7 of its recommendation. And in fact, if you look carefully at those letters, one of the letters is from Representative Stell Parker Selby, who observed that it's a project that looks like smart growth with safety and the economy in mind. There was additional support locally that's within the file from the Milton Chamber of Commerce. And then again, keeping with what's in the comprehensive plan, there's also regional support that is in the file. There is a support letter from the Kent-Sussex Leadership Alliance. There's also a support letter from the Southern Delaware Tourism Office. And of course, there's also a letter, or two letters of support rather, from the Sussex Economic Development Action Committee. A moment ago, I referenced the seventh reason that the Planning Commission provided as part of its recommendation for approval of this change of zone application. I also want to highlight this afternoon the sixth reason the Planning Commission provided, because I felt like it captured this property and described the application very well. The sixth reason for the Planning Commission's recommendation states as follows. Sussex County has anticipated the development of this particular site based upon the investment that DelDOT is making in the intersection there. According to the current Sussex County Comprehensive Plan, this site is designated as being in the developing area, which is a growth area. It is one of the few areas in this part of Route 1 that anticipates a more intensive use while protecting the eastern side of Route 1 from more intensive development. This planning suggests that development beyond the current AR1 zoning can occur in this specific location, and C3 zoning is appropriate here. Again, that is this application stated in just a few sentences, and the reason why my client would ask that County Council adopt the unanimous recommendation of the Planning Commission and that this change of zone application from AR1 to C3 be granted. That concludes my presentation. Myself and Mr. Hughes and my client are available to answer any questions that council and staff may have.
Any questions, council?
I have a
Mr.
couple
Shaver.
questions. Mr. Hutt, I would think you would consider yourself an expert on the Sussex County zoning codes and ordinances and the comprehensive land use plan. Would you consider yourself an expert? Or certainly one of the more learned individuals in the county by virtue of what you do for a living?
By virtue of what I do for a living, I am immersed in it on a daily basis.
Okay. Well, I would consider you an expert, but I don't always agree with you, but I do consider you an expert. I have a question. I hear a lot about schools when we consider development projects. If the applicant were successful in getting this project approved and developing it, how many kids would he be placing into the local school system?
Well, from the portion of the property that we're talking about this afternoon, there would be no school-age children that would be placed into the school district system because, of course, it's proposed to be commercial uses, which will hopefully be an opportunity for people to.
So the answer is none.
The answer is none.
And I would like to note that you finished up your presentation, and it wasn't lost on me when I read the testimony before the Planning and Zoning Commission that the developer's been working with DelDOT for years on this project prior to making any application to Sussex County. And I think this may be the first project I've been involved in while being a council person that the road improvements are actually going to be installed prior to development. And I think that's an amazing feat because I talk about it every day when I talk to people about how important it is to have road improvements installed prior to development, not after. So it was not, again, lost on me that the developer did work with DelDOT and has worked with DelDOT for many years on the project. I also read in the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission some comments by Rich Barrasso, who I believe his title is president of a group called SARGE. And I've had a number of conversations with him over the years. As a matter of fact, I think we're going to get together next week to talk about an unrelated issue, potential development project in Sussex County. And I enjoy those conversations with him. And one of the things we have discussed in the past is some sort of master plan from Route 16 south to the Nassau Bridge. That in the comprehensive plan there needs to be maybe a subset of what the vision is, and you've mentioned that, what the vision is and what the long-range master planning is for that corridor. I don't think it's going to stay the way it is and won't be the way it is 30 years from now. And the decisions we make today will affect, what does occur or does not occur for generations. One of the things we discussed was the fact that there's sewer and water available all along the Route 1 corridor, that it's, one of the most major arterial roads in the state of Delaware, all the way from the I-95 connector in Wilmington all the way down to the Nassau Bridge, and will in fact be denied access during that whole length of road at some point in the very near future. So saying that and being proactive about land use and how we should envision what happens from 16 to Nassau Bridge on Route 1, I think this may be an appropriate use, and might be in keeping with what occurs on that entire corridor, because there is sewer and water along the entire corridor. It is a major arterial road. It's going to be all denied access. The traffic problems will not exist, and that's in the plan with DelDOT. And these improvements are being built today. It's not on a wish list. It's not in a 5-year or 10-year capital improvement plan. It's actually occurring as we sit here today. They're out there building these structures from 16 to Nassau Bridge. So, I would submit that, we really need to look at that, and I agree with your comments, your comments on that. Another thing I read was that Mr. Barrasso mentioned that if this were to be developed in the minutes of the P&Z hearing, that this would then put the improvements that are being built today over capacity or under capacity with the development, and you refuted that statement, I believe, and Mr. Hughes did also, I believe, and I just want to point that out for the record, that I don't believe was an accurate statement. I don't think he intentionally tried to mislead anybody. I just don't think he understood exactly how well the developer worked with DelDOT in ensuring that this project, if developed, that the capacity of that interchange and that flyover and these roundabouts and the acceleration and deacceleration lanes would adequately handle any traffic that was produced if this were to be developed. And I just wanted to point that out because I read that Mr. Barrasso made those comments, and I just wanted to make sure we answered that, and you got way ahead of me and did answer that before I had a chance to ask the question.
Mr. Schaefer, if I may.
Yeah.
One thing that I did not introduce into the record, but it may be helpful to address that concern exactly. I referenced, and Mr. Hughes referenced, the memorandum of understanding that exists, and that is not in the presentation materials. I'm happy to submit it so that the county has it, which again references that maximum number of trips. I'm certainly happy to submit that if that would be helpful to you in the county to see that along with the traffic impact study review letter. And
that memorandum of understanding would bind the developer into making improvements to handle the amount of trips that he would possibly be putting into that road system.
It is a signed memorandum between DelDOT and the owner of the property.
Yeah. I also read in the minutes that there was some concern that the developer hasn't disclosed who his possible, what I call in the planning world, what his end users or who his end users are. And would it be a fair statement to say, I've been doing this as an elected land use council person, both in municipal and county level now for almost 13 years. And would it be a fair statement to say that if the developer disclosed to the whole world who his possible end users are, that every competing developer in the county would be on the phone with those potential users before he got back to his office? And maybe that's what gives him some pause to announce to the world who his potential user is for the site?
I think that is a concern. Another concern that a lot of businesses and companies have is that they don't want to be the poster child of a change of zone application. So they want to see that the zoning is appropriate before, and that all they need to do is meet all the agency requirements, meet the zoning code, and submit a site plan, because some names of companies and some names of businesses have a tendency to create controversy in and of themselves just by saying a name. As I indicated, there are no contracts, there are no LOIs for this site. But I think what you said about competitors, but also the change of zone happens, and once the zoning designation is appropriate, people know this is what the law or the zoning code allows me to do on this site. I fit here, I don't fit here, based upon what that zoning code is. And for someone to say right now, well, if you can accomplish this change of zone, property owner, then I'll do this. Certainly some folks are willing to do that and are willing to put their names out there, but those are few and far between, and there are none of those things that exist for this property. And that is why it is unknown. My office has received a number of calls asking who the end users of this site, who the companies will be. And as I've told, my staff has told everyone who has called in, the answer is we don't know. Again, this is a change of zone application that will allow for businesses to be able to prepare a site plan and cause this site to be developed.
I'd also make the observation, I hear a lot from folks in my district when I attend HOA meetings and community meetings that, they say to me, we moved down here, we love Sussex County, we love Rehoboth, Lewis, Milton. Why don't we have any opportunities like a Costco's or a Sam's Club or a Target? And I say, well, folks, the fact of the matter is we have no inventory. We have no land to put those type of retailers. I think a Costco's probably needs 6 to 8 acres with their parking requirements and the size of their building. Same with a Sam's Club or a Target. Are you aware of any inventory from 16 south to the Indian River Bridge other than between 16 and Nassau Bridge of any inventory where a retailer of that size could be located?
No, not that I can think of. And just like your HOA meetings, my wife shares those concerns with me on a regular basis about those same stores.
I've heard some people say, well, just, drive to Wilmington and, you can shop up there. But, I don't think that's the answer. I think we need, quite frankly, with our population and the quality of life we have here, people deserve to be able to shop where they live. And I think we need retail users like that in the area. But so, I don't know where else that's going to go other than between Route 16 and the Nassau Bridge. And I think, we need to start being proactive and looking at those types of things. But anyway, I think the only other question I had, and maybe it's for Mr. Hughes, I don't know, that I just want to make sure that I'm clear that traffic entering and exiting this site can actually get on and off Route 1 without passing any subdivisions, any residences. They can, go up to the roundabout and go south. They can go underneath, get on the other roundabout and go north and not pass, drive by one subdivision. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. The entrance points and exit points are located here, again, which is going to be part of the ramps to go on and off of Route 16 to get to Route 1. And then the other location where a person could enter and leave the property is down here. Again, this is the ingress, and then this is the egress onto Route 1. And, of course, the rookery is immediately adjacent to that crossway.
And all of those improvements totaling approximately $30 million will be installed prior to any development occurring, or the improvements at the flyover.
That's correct.
I'd also like to note I did read with interest Representative Selby's letter in support of this application, and I'd like to say for the record I've known Representative Selby for quite a while, and I respect her vision and her opinion very much. That's all. Those are the only questions I have.
One thing, if I could respond to one of your initial comments, Mr. Schaefer, about the development of the corridor from Route 16 down to the Nassau Bridge. One of the things that the level of involvement that the developer has had since 2019 to date that allows for something like this to occur is the fact that those improvements, like you said, are going in first. But what you see there is when you have a piece of property along the corridor capacity program, which is what you were describing as far as denials of access, what's required are things like service roads that you see on the screen around the room. If development happens before DelDOT gets there and people are entering and exiting off of Route 1, it can become either a very expensive proposition for DelDOT to acquire the lands to create a service road, but those service roads, like you see represented on this plan as a potential location for it, are part of the key to being able to develop those areas on the western side of Route 1 that you were just referring to.
Okay. And Bud, sir?
Yes, sir.
And your agreement that you entered is part of the record now.
Thank you.
That was a good job of more statements than questions. You did good. Mr. Riley?
Yeah, I'd keep it pretty brief, but, I mean, you guys did an amazing job, you know, and very thorough. Clearly, a lot of thought did go into it. But at the end of the presentation, I'm still left sitting here wondering exactly what I'd be voting for. And it's not clear to me. I know, you know, you've stated the reasons why, you know, that information may not be available right now. So in the absence of that, I almost have to assume that you're going to be permitted, we would be permitting the most intense potential use for that type of zoning. So it would be helpful for me if we had some conceptual vision of what's being proposed, you know, and as you were talking, I look at the photograph or the screen, if you recall where the grottos is up in Milford, for example. You know, this almost reminds me of that type of a project. And if that were the case, that would give me a little bit of direction. But I've heard everything from a water park to, you know, all sorts of different things. So I'm just still feeling like I'm not exactly sure what would be the end game here. The other point is, you know, I recall that the council previous to when I was first seated had a lot of discussions about, you know, and a lot of the points made in the rhetoric used was the same, except they were talking about Cave Neck Road, that intersection, and the proposal to build a large commercial development there. And, you know, that council had made a determination that they wanted to sort of draw a line and say, we want commercial no further north than here. I mean, right or wrong, that was the policy that they embraced. And yet now we are beyond Cave Neck Road and we are now discussing Route 16. And you can almost see the dominoes start to fall. So it would help me if there was a little more clarity around exactly what is being proposed. And maybe you can't give that, but would be helpful.
I'm going to respond to your comments in the I'm going to respond to your second comment first and then the first comment second. With respect to your second comment regarding the location, there was a concern that commercial development would stop at Cave Neck Road. I would say that what has changed since then and what is different since then is that the 2045 future land use map identified this piece of property as being in a developing area, indicating that council thinks that this is an appropriate location for growth. And again, all the factors that made that an appropriate designation on the future land use map are the same factors that make it appropriate to be C3. It's location with respect to highways, it's the availability of central water and sewer. And that is some of the things that Mr. Schaefer was referencing in his comments that he made a moment ago, is that there is water and sewer that's available in those areas. And so having that be located there, but there are certainly other areas, many other areas, as you saw when we looked at the future land use map. There is one large developing area that's shown, and that's at this significant intersection in Sussex County. And so, for instance, if there was an application along another portion of Route 1 that's shown as being in a low-density area, well, that would certainly not be consistent with a comprehensive plan as it's currently shown there. So I think that, with respect to your second comment, I think those decisions were made prior to the most recent adoption of the comprehensive plan. And within that, again, as I mentioned during my presentation, Chapter 4 says, it comes right out and says that Chapter 4 is the most significant part of the plan and talks about those growth areas, and one of those is located at this intersection that's shown on the screen.
I understand, and I grant that point, but I'll point out also that the very same council that produced that plan was the same council that had adopted that policy of we don't want development north of essentially this imaginary line.
If I may.
Am I accurate?
Being I was on
You
the
were
council,
there.
It was, we did not want commercial on the east side of Route 1.
Okay, well, that helps.
East side of Route 1, we thought should be low-density residential, and commercial on the west side of Route 1.
Well, that helps.
That was the opinion of that council.
Okay,
And
that helps.
And significant to that, and Mr. Vincent, I know, will remember this, during the county's process of adopting the comprehensive plan, this property was specifically talked about, and the county agreed to specifically change this property to developing area, due in large part to the millions of dollars that are being spent improving this intersection, the availability of water and sewer, all of the factors that were presented that Mr. Schaefer just described. That council, the same council you're talking about, was persuaded that this property was appropriate to be a developing area on the future land use map. Again, consistent with what we heard about, what we read about level 3 areas and the long-range master planning and the connection of regions and those types of activities. With respect to your first question, I can't tell you who, because there isn't one, I can't tell you who the end user is, but I do think that, and I've talked about it with my clients, that the Silicato Park that you mentioned just on the southeast side of Milford,
Right.
is a lot like what this
So
is.
conceptually, I mean, you don't have to list brand names, but conceptually, that's what you have in mind.
Correct. And as I mean, certainly you've traveled that road many times. If you flip this site at that intersection, this grade separated interchange is on the south side of that site. But you do have the on and off, just like you would have at this site, where you can go in right by Royal Farms and go in. And so, again, not using names, but if you were to do that here and turn in, there could be a gas convenience store here, just like that on Silicato Parkway in Milford. There could be a restaurant, a hotel. There's an office building. That's the next one up, I believe, at the Silicato Parkway.
Well, that clarifies it quite a bit. I mean, 'cause you look at the list of what's in C3, I mean, it's a big open number of items that you could potentially have there, so.
There is.
That narrows it down, at least conceptually.
Yes, and again, the thought of this is it is a retail and family entertainment center, and the one that we're talking about in Milford has similar aspects to that. There's certainly food, convenience store, hotel, and then again, there is an office building. I think BB's in, or one of the healthcare providers is in the office building.
Yeah.
More questions of council?
Excuse myself for a minute.
Any more questions of council? Thank you, sir. Oh, sorry. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Hutt. Is there anyone here today that would like to speak in favor of this application? Anyone that would like to speak in favor? Sir? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas.
Good afternoon, Council. Scott Thomas, I'm representing Southern Delaware Tourism. Council, just wanted to explain Southern Delaware Tourism's support of this, this change in zoning. Really two reasons. One, a lot we've already heard about. Such a proposed change in zone would position this parcel to become a retail and entertainment attraction, not just for locals, but for regional and visitors coming. It would bolster Sussex County's, Sussex County's $2.7 billion tourism industry. It would also give locals more retail and entertainment outlets, as we talked about, or some of you talked about earlier, which I think would really enhance the quality of life here. The second reason really is a big one, and also talked about a lot, and the reason we support it is before such an attraction would open its doors, the infrastructure would already be in place with its proximity to the Route 16, Route 1 grade separated interchange and the corresponding service roads, which would make it travel friendly to visitors and residents. So really that's it. Just wanted to reinforce our support of this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you. There was someone else raised their hand in the back.